Learn Social Science by Jatin Dikshit, History Class 12th Board Exam 2027 Important Board Questions Chapter Wise. Chapter 1 Bricks, Beads and Bones, the Harappan Civilization. Q. 1. How do archaeologists trace socio-economic differences in Harappan society? What are the differences they notice? OR. Describe any three features of the burial sites in Harappa. Ans. Archaeologists generally use the following strategies to find out the socio-economic differences among the people in the Harappan society. 1. Burials. A. At burials in Harappan sites, the dead were generally laid in pits. There were differences in way the burial pit was made. In some cases, the hollowed out spaces were lined with bricks. But not sure whether these variations were an indication of social differences or not. B. Some graves contain pottery and ornaments indicating that these could be used in the afterlife. C. Jewelry has been found in burials of both men and women. In some cases, dead were buried with copper mirrors, but it appears that Harappan people didn't believe in burying precious things with dead. E. Artifacts. Another strategy to identify social difference is to study artifacts which are classified as luxuries and utilitarian. A. Utilitarian. It includes objects of daily use made such as fairly, easily out of ordinary material, stone or clay, e.g. pottery, needles and so on. B. Luxuries. It includes objects which are rare or made of costly non-local materials or with complicated technologies. X. Little pots of 5 ounce were probably considered precious because they were difficult to make. Q. 2. Discuss any three features of the Harappan drainage system. OR. Would you agree that the drainage system in Harappan cities indicate town planning? Give reasons for your answer. OR. One of the most distinctive features of the Harappan cities was the carefully planned drainage system. Elaborate. Ans. Yes, I agree that the drainage system in Harappan cities indicate town planning. This can be justified through the following points. A. At the plan of the lower town, it was noticed that roads and streets were laid out along an approximate grid pattern intersecting at right angles. B. Every house needed to have at least one wall along a street so that domestic wastewater can flow into the street drains. It seems that the streets with drains were laid out first and then the houses built along them. C. Every house was connected to main street drains. The main channels were made of brick set in mortar and were covered with loose bricks that can be removed for cleaning. In some cases, limestone was used for the covers. D. Water from house drains first emptied into a sump or casket into which solid matter settled while wastewater flowed out into the street drains. E. From the above points, we can say the Harappan cities had a carefully planned drainage system. Q. 3. Describe the contribution of John Marshall, Director General of ASI of Indian Archaeology. OR. Who was John Marshall? How did he mark change in Indian archaeology? Ans. John Marshall was a famous archaeologist who was the Director General of the Archaeological Survey of India in 1924, when site of Harappa was excavated. Based on the finds in 1924, John Marshall announced the discovery of a new civilization in the Indus Valley to the world. Change in Indian archaeology marked by John Marshall. I. He marked a change in Indian archaeology by announcing the discovery of the Indus Valley civilization. E. He left India 3000 years older than he found her. E. He was the first professional archaeologist to work in India. IV. He brought his experience of working in Greece and Crete to the field. V. He was interested in spectacular fields. V. He was equally keen to look for patterns of everyday life. Q. 4. Who was R.E.M. Wheeler? Mention any one of his contribution in the field of archaeology. Ans. R.E.M. Wheeler was a British archaeologist who became Director General ASI in 1944. He introduced a systematic and scientific approach to archaeological excavation in India. I. He rectified the excavations done by John Marshall so as to follow stratigraphy of the mound to excavate. E. He classified objects according to layer of the soil where it was found. E. This stratigraphy technique provided a clear understanding of the chronological sequence of Harappan settlements. IV, being an ex-army brigadier, Wheeler brought military precision to archaeology which improved documentation and analysis. He also tried to correlate archaeological findings of Harappan civilization with the Rig Veda. Q. 5. Describe the town planning of Harappa. OR. Mention any three features of Harappan cities. Ans. The features of town planning of Harappan cities includes a division into two sections. The Harappan cities, including Mohenjo-daro, were divided into two parts, the citadel which was smaller but higher, and the lower town, which was larger but lower. The citadel was constructed on raised mud brick platforms and was physically separated from lower town. B. Use of standardized bricks. The bricks used in construction where the sun-dried or baked followed a standardized ratio, where length was 4 times of height and the breadth was twice the height. C. Carefully planned drainage system. The drainage system was a key feature of town planning, with streets and roads laid out in a grid pattern, intersecting at right angles. Drains were built first, then houses were constructed along them. D. Houses with courtyards and privacy measures. Residential buildings in the lower town were centered around courtyard, which served as areas for domestic activities like cooking and weaving. For privacy, houses had no windows at the ground level. E. Public and private wells. Many houses had private wells, often located in room accessible from outside, which can be used by passers-by. Mohenjo-daro alone had about 700 wells. F. Massive labor mobilization. The construction of foundations for buildings required large-scale labor mobilization. It had been estimated that moving the necessary volume of earth for the foundations alone would have taken 4 million persons day. G. Raised platforms for buildings. Many buildings were constructed on raised mud bricks platforms which served as foundations. This not only provided stability but also protected buildings from potential flooding. H. Citadel for special structures. The citadel was the house of important public structures like the warehouse and the Great Bath at Mohenjo-daro. These buildings were likely used for administrative, religious and storage purpose. Q. 6. Explain how archaeologists have been able to reconstruct dietary practices of the Harappans. Ans. Archaeologists reconstructed dietary practices through the following ways. A. Study of charred grains and seeds. Archaeologists have analyzed charred remains of grains and seeds found at Harappan sites which provide direct evidence of the types of crops cultivated. These findings reveal that wheat, barley, lentils, chickpea and sesame were commonly grown, while millets found mainly in Gujarat. B. Analysis by archaeo-botanists, specialists in ancient plant remains, have examined these grains remains to identify the agricultural diversity of the Harappans. The rare availability of rice suggests that it was not a staple crop. C. Animal bones and hunting evidence. The study of animal bones at hunting sites indicates that Harappans consume meat from domesticated animals like cattle, sheep, goat, buffalo and pigs. The presence of bones from wild species like boars, deers and gharials suggests hunting and trading activities of Harappans with other communities. Q. 7. Historians considered the Harappan seals as the distinctive artifact. Examine the statement. Ans. Historians regard Harappan seals as a distinctive artifact because they reveal unique things of the Indus Valley civilization's culture, administration, trade and art. These seals are one of the most identifiable symbols of Harappan society. I. Harappan seals square or rectangle shape are usually made of steatite, a soft stone that becomes hard after firing, and have animal motifs. E. Harappan seals usually have a line of writing probably containing the name and title of the owner. E. Most inscriptions on seals are short, the longest containing have about 26 signs. IV. These seals indicate the existence of authority which may have issued them in order to exercise power. V. Harappan seals provide several evidence of trade with distant lands like Mesopotamia where many Harappan seals were found during excavations. V. Harappan seals also reflect the religious beliefs of the Harappan people through the image depiction on seals of bulls, one-horned animal often called unicorn and that of Proto-Shiva. Q. 8. Why were the seals and sealings used by the Harappan to facilitate long-distance communication? Explain with examples. Ans. I. In Harappan society, seals and sealings were used to facilitate long-distance trade and communication. E. Imagine a bag of goods being sent from one place to another. Its mouth was tied with a rope and of the knot was affixed some wet clay on which one or more seals were pressed, leaving an impression. E. This was done for the security purpose of the product sent to faraway distance. IV. The seals also gives the identity of the sender, person's name, and title of the owner. V. If the bag reached with its sealing intact, it means that it had not been tampered by another person in between the journey. V. Motifs, a picture or pattern generally of an animal, the seal were used to convey the meaning of those persons who couldn't read. Q. 9. Explain how did archaeologists identify the centers of craft production of Harappan age? Ans. Historians look for the following things to identify the centers of craft production. I. Raw material remains copper, stone, shells and tools. Debris, pieces of manufactured craft goods greater than a certain level helps historians to identify the contours of craft production. E. Wastes are considered the good indicator for the production of crafts as shells or stones are cut to make new objects, so little pieces of such materials are the evidences. E. Past enabled the historians to reflect that apart small specialized empire, Lothal, Balakot, production was also in large cities as Mohenjo-daro and Harappa. IV. Currency found on the site of exploration which were used as exchange in those days. Finding of remain of factories, manufacturing sites where the crafts were manufactured. Q. 10. There were different views of archaeologists on the administration of Harappa. Explain the statement with examples. Ans. I. There are indications of complex decisions taken and implemented in Harappan society. E. Extraordinary uniformity of Harappan artifacts X. Pottery. E. Evidence of planned urban center and town planning. IV. Uniform ratio of bricks in different regions of civilization, though they are not produced at single center, proves that there could be only one authority. V. A stone was labeled as the priest king. V. A large building was found at Mohenjo-daro is labeled as palace. V. The ritual practices of the Harappan civilization are not well understood, neither we know that the persons who performed them also held political power or not. V. Some archaeologists believe that Harappan had no rulers and everybody enjoyed equal status. X. Some others believed that there were several rulers, not single ruler, like Mohenjo-daro had a separate ruler, Harappa another, and so forth. X. It is likely that Harappan practiced some sort of democratic system. Moreover, large-scale mobilization of labor can also be traced for the construction activities. Q. 11. Explain how were the historians able to provide new insights into the subsistence strategies of Harappan people, culture. Analyze. Ans. A continuity between early and mature Harappan phases. Historians identified the subsistence strategies remained consistent from early to mature Harappan period, indicating a gradual evolution in food production. The use of agriculture, pastoralism, hunting and gathering show a diverse approach to securing food resources. B. Archaeological excavations and scientific studies. Excavations at various sites, along with scientific analysis by archaeobotanists and archaeozoologists, provided crucial insights into diet and farming techniques. The discovery of charred grains, animal bones and terracotta models of plough helped historians to understand the role of agriculture and animal husbandry in sustaining the Harappan population. C. Evidence of agricultural techniques and water management. The discovery of a ploughed field at Kalibangan, along with the presence of wells and water reservoirs at Dolavira, suggests that the Harappans used advanced agricultural methods. While canals were found at Chotugai, their absence in Punjab and Sindh indicates the use of alternative irrigation methods like well irrigation. Q. 12. The most unique feature of the Harappan civilization was the development of domestic architecture. Substantiate the statement. OR. Describe the distinctive features of Mohenjo-daro. OR. Explain the distinctive characteristics of the residential buildings of Mohenjo-daro. Ans. A. Planned residential structures. The lower town of Mohenjo-daro had well-planned residential buildings, many of which were centered around a courtyard with rooms on all sides. These courtyards likely served as spaces for domestic activities such as cooking and weaving, particularly during hot and dry weather. B. Privacy and sanitation. The houses exhibited a concern for privacy, as they had no windows at the ground level and the main entrance did not provide a direct view of the courtyard or interior. Additionally, every house had a bathroom paved with bricks, with drains connected to the street drainage system, ensuring efficient waste disposal. C. Access to water and multi-story houses. Many houses had their wells, sometimes in rooms accessible from outside, possibly for public use. Some houses also featured staircases, indicating the presence of a second story or rooftop access, highlighting the advanced architectural planning of the Harappan civilization. Q. 13. Harappan script is considered as an enigmatic script. Justify the statement with suitable arguments. Ans. Justification of the Harappan script as an enigmatic script. A. Undeciphered script. Despite numerous attempts, the Harappan script remains undeciphered due to the lack of bilingual inscription. This makes it difficult to understand the language, meaning and structure of their writing system. B. Large number of symbols. The script consists of 375 to 400 distinct signs, suggesting it was not an alphabetic script but rather a complex system. The inscriptions are usually short, with the longest containing only about 26 signs, limiting linguistic analysis. C. Direction and writing mediums. The script was written from right to left, as seen from the spacing of characters. It was found on various objects, including seals, pottery, copper tools and tablets, indicating its widespread use. However, the absence of long texts and perishable writing materials adds to its mystery. Q. 14. Explain the agricultural practices and technologies of the Harappans. Ans. The Harappans practiced plowing, as suggested by terracotta sculptures and seals depicting bulls. Archaeologists have found evidence of a plowed field at Kalibangan in Rajasthan, where furrows arranged at right angles, indicating the simultaneous cultivation of two different crops. This suggests a sophisticated approach to farming. B. Harappans cultivated a variety of crops, including wheat, barley, lentils and chickpeas and sesame, as identified from archaeological remains. Millet was grown in Gujarat, but finds of rice were relatively rare. This diversity in crops reflects an advanced understanding of agriculture suitable to different climatic conditions. C. Domestication of animals was an essential part of Harappan agriculture. The bones of cattle, sheep, goats, buffaloes and pigs found at excavation sites indicate their use in farming and food production. Additionally, remains of wild species such as boar, deer and gharial have been discovered, though it is unclear whether these were hunted by the Harappans or obtained through trade with hunting communities. D. The discovery of terracotta plough models of Cholistan and Banwali indicates that plough was an essential tool in Harappan farming. E. Since most Harappan settlements were located in semi-arid regions, they had to adapt their agricultural techniques accordingly. Farmers possibly practiced dry farming in certain areas, depending on seasonal rainfall, while others may have relied on irrigation. Their ability to cultivate crops in diverse conditions highlights their agricultural expertise. F. The question of how seeds were sown remains uncertain. Some scholars argue that seeds were scattered, broadcast, over plowed land, while others suggest that they were carefully placed in furrows for better crop yield. This uncertainty highlights the need for further research into Harappan agricultural techniques. G. Granaries found in Harappan cities suggest that they stored surplus agricultural produce. These large storage structures indicate a well-organized system of food distribution and centralized control over resources. The presence of such granaries points to a highly structured economy based on agriculture. H. Agricultural surplus played a crucial role in Harappan trade. The production of excess grains likely facilitated economic exchanges with distant regions, enabling the civilization to acquire raw materials such as metals and precious stones. This interdependence agriculture and trade contributed to the prosperity of the Harappan economy. Q. 15. The problems of archaeological interpretation are perhaps most evident in attempts to reconstruct religious practices of the Harappan civilization. Explain this statement with examples wherever necessary. Ans. Interpreting the religious practices of the Harappan civilization presents major difficulties due to the absence of undeciphered written records. Most reconstructions rely heavily on material remains, which are open to varied interpretations. B. At sites like Kalibangan and Lothal, fire altars have been identified, suggesting ritualistic fire worship. However, without textual evidence, the nature of these rituals and their religious significance remains unclear. C. Some attempts of reconstruction of religious practices and beliefs by examining seals and other seals of plant motifs are thought to indicate nature worship. Examples: seals with unicorn, yogic, surrounded with plants and animals. E. Some seals feature mythical creatures and nature motifs, leading to suggestions of nature or animal worship. These interpretations, however, are often based on assumptions drawn from later religious traditions. F. Many times reconstruction of Harappan religion is made on the assumption that later traditions provide parallels with earlier ones. G. Early archaeologists thought that certain objects which seemed unusual or unfamiliar may have had a religious significance. X. Terracotta figurines of women, priest, king. Q. 16. Explain with the different approaches used for the classification of found objects by archaeologists, with examples from the Harappan ruins. Ans. Archaeologists classify the finds on two principles. One is based on the material they are made of and the other is based on their functions. B. Based on the materials they are made of like stone, clay, metal, bone and so on. Example: terracotta figurines of animals and women, copper tools, stone weight. C. Based on the functions that these artifacts most likely served. One way of doing this was to estimate this by its resemblance of its present-day things. Examples: beads could be personal ornaments, but also used in trade. D. Another way of finding function by investigating the context it was found in. The location where an object is found critical. Was it in a house, grave or a workshop? Example: a pot found in a grave might have held food offerings, while one found in a house may indicate everyday use. E. Sometimes the archaeologists have to depend on indirect evidence. Example: to find out what Harappans were, they had to depend on indirect evidences including depictions in sculptures. F. Objects are also understood by placing them within a broader cultural timeline or comparing them to finds from other civilizations. Example: Harappan seals were better understood after comparing them with Mesopotamian one, which provided trade and symbolic links. Q. 17. Describe the contributions of various archaeologists from 1875 till 1950 in discovering the Harappan civilization. Ans. A. Kanam's initial confusion, mid-19th century. Kanam, the first Director General of the Archaeological Survey of India, ASI, initially focused on the archaeology of the early historic period. When he encountered Harappan artifacts, he failed to recognize their significance, as he believed Indian history began with the cities of the Ganga Valley. B. Dayaram Sahni's discovery, early 20th century. In the early decades of the 20th century, Dayaram Sahni excavated Harappa and found seals at the site which were later identified as part of a much older civilization. This discovery was crucial in realizing that Harappa was not part of the known early historic period but belonged to a much earlier civilization. C. Rakhal Das Banerjee's contribution, 1920s. Banerjee's discovery of Harappan seals at Mohenjo-daro further confirmed the connection between Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, suggesting they were part of a single archaeological culture. This laid the foundation for understanding the extent of the Harappan civilization. D. John Marshall's key announcement, 1924. John Marshall, Director General of ASI, played a pivotal role in officially announcing the discovery of the Harappan civilization in 1924. His work helped establish the civilization as contemporaneous with Mesopotamia, marking a significant breakthrough in global archaeology. E. Wheeler's stratigraphy method, 19405, R.E.M. Wheeler, who took over as Director General of ASI in the 1940s, improved excavation techniques by focusing on stratigraphy. This approach helped preserve the context of artifacts, leading to a more accurate understanding of the sequence of cultural layers at Harappan sites. F. Explorations in Pakistan and India. Post-partition. After the partition of India, archaeologists focused on uncovering Harappan sites in India. Sites such as Kalibangan, Lothal, Rakhigari, and Dholavira were discovered, adding more depth to the understanding of the civilization's extent and its role in the subcontinent. G. International collaboration in the 1980s. In the 1980s, international interest in Harappan archaeology grew with collaboration BLW Indian and foreign archaeologists at Harappa and Mohenjo-daro. These joint efforts led to the application of modern scientific techniques, providing new insights into the civilization's material culture and daily life. H. The importance of modern techniques, post-1980s, with new scientific methods, including surface exploration and analysis of clay, metal and organic materials, the understanding of the Harappan civilization has deepened. These methods continue to yield valuable results, helping to piece together a more detailed picture of the civilization's complexities. Q. 18. Over the decades, new issues have assumed importance in the archaeology of Harappa. Give evidence to justify the statement. Ans. Over the decades, new issues have assumed importance in Harappan archaeology. A. Some archaeologists are often keen to obtain a cultural sequence. B. Other archaeologists try to understand the logic underlying the location of a specific time. C. They grapple with the wealth of artifacts trying to figure out the functions these may have served. D. Specialists from the subcontinent and abroad now work together on sites, using modern techniques to excavate and analyze every scrap of evidence found. Q. 19. Early Harappan archaeologists found certain objects that seemed unusual and unfamiliar but may have had a religious significance. Substantiate. OR. Examine the problems faced by archaeologists in the interpretations of religious practices of Harappa. Ans. The religion of Harappa. A. Terracotta figurines of women as mother goddesses. B. The priest king. C. Structures like the Great Bath and fire altars found at Kalibangan and Lothal. D. Attempts have also been made to reconstruct religious practices by examining seals. E. Plant motifs were thought to indicate nature worship. F. Some animals' unicorns seem to be mythical. G. Proto-Shiva. H. Conical stone objects have been classified as lingas. Many female figures of terracotta have been found from Harappa. Historians believe them to be mother goddess. They were heavily jeweled and even wore headdresses. Rare statues of men in a standardized posture, seated with one hand on the knee, were classified as the priest king. In some instances, structures associated with ritual significance including the Great Bath and Five Altar in Kalibangan and Lothal have been found. Attempts have been made to reconstruct religious beliefs and practices by examining seals, which depict ritual scenes. In some seals, a figure shown as cross-legged in a yogic posture surrounded by animals has been regarded as Proto-Shiva. While reconstructing the religion of the Harappans, archaeologists try to make sense of religious symbols by comparing them to the religions and rituals practiced today. Q. 20. John Marshall's time as Director General of the ASI marked a major change in Indian archaeology. Critically analyze this statement. Ans. A. John Marshall's experience of working in Greece and Crete helped him with the excavation exercise in India. B. He was equally keen to look for patterns of everyday life as he was with the spectacular finds. C. All the artifacts recovered from the same unit were grouped together, even if they were found at different stratigraphic layers. As a result, valuable information about the context of these finds was irretrievably lost. D. Marshall tended to excavate along regular horizontal units measured uniformly throughout the mound, ignoring the stratigraphy of the site. E. He was the first professional archaeologist in India. F. He became Director General of ASI in 1924. Q. 21. Prove with the help of examples that the Harappans had established their contacts with Western Asia for purchase, exchange of artifacts. Ans. Harappans had established their contacts with Western Asia for the purchase and exchange of artifacts. Here are some examples. 1. Recent archaeological findings indicate that copper was probably brought from Oman, situated on the southeastern tip of the Arabian Peninsula. 2. Chemical analyses have shown that both the Omani copper and Harappan artifacts have traces of nickel, suggesting a common origin. 3. A distinctive type of vessel, a large Harappan jar coated with a thick layer of black clay has been found at sites in Oman. Such thick coatings prevent the percolation of liquids. It is possible that the Harappans exchanged the contents of these vessels for Omani copper. 4. Mesopotamian texts mention contact with regions named Dilmum, probably the island of Bahrain, Magan and Melucha, possibly the Harappan region. They mention the products from Melucha, carnelian, lapis lazuli, copper, gold and varieties of wood. Q. 22. Who was Cunningham? Mention any one source he collected to understand the Harappan culture. OR. Who was Cunningham? Mention any one account used by him to locate the early settlements of Harappan civilization. Ans. Alexander Cunningham. He was the first Director General of Archaeological Survey of India in 1861 who began archaeological excavations in the mid-19th century. One source he collected. I. Harappan seal. E. Terracotta objects. E. Harappan inscriptions. IV. Harappan artifacts. V. Chinese Buddhist pilgrims' accounts. Harappan seal. This seal was given to Cunningham by an Englishman. He noted the object, but unsuccessfully tried to place it within the time frame with which he was familiar. Q. 23. Describe the agricultural practices and means of irrigation used by the Harappans. Ans. Agricultural practices and means of irrigation used by the Harappans are as follows. I. The Harappans ate a wide range of plant products. Archaeologists have been reconstructing dietary practices fume findings of charred grains, seeds and bones. E. Food grains found at Harappan sites include wheat, barley, lentil, chickpea sesame, millets and rice. E. Bones of wild species such as bear, deer and gharial were also found. IV. The field had two sets of furrows at right angles to each other, suggesting that two different crops were grown together. V. Water was drawn from wells and water reservoirs was used for irrigation. Q. 24. Explain how different methods of irrigation were developed for agriculture in the Harappan site. Ans. Different methods of irrigation were. I. Most Harappan sites are located in semi-arid lands, where irrigation was probably required for agriculture. E. Traces of canals have been found at the Harappan sites of Shotughai in Afghanistan. E. Wells were also used for the irrigation. IV. Water reservoirs found in Dholavira, Gujarat, used to store water for agriculture. Q. 25. Describe any three sources to know about the Harappan civilization. OR. Discuss how archaeologists reconstruct the past. Ans. I. Material evidence. Archaeologists were not only dependent on Harappan script, it was material evidence too. The material evidence could be pottery, tools, ornaments and so on. Organic materials such as cloth, leather, wood and reeds generally decompose, especially in tropical area. B. Archaeologists classify their finds in terms of materials such as stone, clay, metal, bone, ivory etc. and in terms of functions to decide whether, for instance, an artifact is a tool or an ornament, or both, or something meant for ritual use. E. Religious practices. A. Archaeologists faced problems in attempts to reconstruct religious practices. Archaeologists thought that certain objects which seemed unusual or unfamiliar may have had a religious significance. These included terracotta figurines of women, heavily jeweled, some with elaborate headdresses. B. Rare stone statuary of men in an almost standardized posture seated with one hand on the knee such as priest-king was also similarly classified. E. Structures. Structures like the Great Bath and fire altars have been assigned ritual significance. Plant motifs thought to indicate nature worship. Animals such as one-horned animal called as unicorn depicted on seals seem to be mythical. B. A figure seated cross-legged in yogic posture surrounded by animals has been regarded as depiction of Proto-Shiva. Q. 26. Describe any three features of the Great Bath used in the Harappan Civilization. Ans. The Great Bath was a large rectangular tank in a courtyard surrounded by a corridor on all four sides. The main features of Great Bath are I. There were two sets of steps, one in the north and the other in the south, that goes to the tank. E. Once water in the tank is used, then it drains. E. The uniqueness of the structure had led scholars to suggest that it was meant for a special ritual bath. IV. There were rooms on three sides, in one of which was a large well. Water from the tank flowed into a huge drain. V. Structures and features. Dimensions. The bath measures 12 meters, 39 feet, long, 7 meters, 23 feet, wide and 2.4 meters, 8 feet, deep. V. Waterproofing. The floors and walls were lined with burnt bricks and a layer of bitumen